Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on Regulatory Compliance Made Easy. My name is Pete Graham. I'm from SAP Solution Management Team. Joining me today will be Romeo De Leon and Ilya Vadenko from Nakisa. Today's session is going to cover mainly how SAP Lease Administration by Nakisa can help customers become compliant around the lease accounting topic and also the revenue recognition topic. For the revenue recognition topic, we'll talk a little bit about how Lease Administration by Nakisa is actually complementary with SAP Revenue Accounting and Reporting. So there's no conflict with that, and we'll explain that in a few minutes. Let's go to basically the right slide. So basically, we will cover today's session pretty much products that are available in the marketplace, but we will talk a little bit about some of the roadmap issues. And for the speakers today, we have myself. Again, I'm from the Solution Management Team for SAP. I cover core accounting topics such as the General Ledger, Simple Finance, and S/4HANA Finance, as well as regulatory change topics such as lease accounting and revenue recognition. Joining us from Nakisa are Romeo De Leon. He is the Vice President of Product Management, so he basically heads up the product team at Nakisa, which is actually growing quite large. They've grown the financial products team quite a bit over the year. And one of those ads was Ilya Vadenko. He actually joined, I think it's almost a year ago, and he's been focusing on the financial products from Nakisa, and he'll be giving us some demos later today. So great to have Romeo and Ilya on the phone and conference call with us today. So next we will cover our agenda, and really we want to split it up into the two topics related to compliance today. First is around the lease accounting topic, so we'll talk about lease administration and really where that product came from, and then we'll talk about revenue recognition. And it turns out that the Big Four had come to us after we had done some work with Nakisa on the lease administration product, and they really liked the functionality, and they thought that it could help when customers were to assess revenue accounting contracts, and so we'll try to explain that here later in the session. With that, what I'm going to do is just quickly go through this slide from my perspective, then I'm going to turn it over to Romeo to cover the first section, and then I'll come back and cover the revenue accounting section a little bit later. But SAP and Nakisa have been working as partners for a number of years. I think it's officially almost 10 now, and unofficially even longer than that. And their solution, SAP Lease Administration by Nakisa, is on the SAP price list. They're a solution extension partner. They meet the premium qualifications that SAP has, and so their products are sold and supported by SAP just like any other solutions. Romeo, do you want to now take over and kind of add your 2 cents and then cover the leasing topic?
Sure. Thanks, Pete. And hello, everybody. My name is Romeo De Leon. Thanks for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it. To get things started, a little bit of our partnership. In summary, it's really about extending SAP to meet the needs of our customers. We have solutions in HCM, but today we're going to focus on finance, how we can help you in regards to the regulatory changes in the accounting space, the revenue recognition, lease administration, lease accounting. So to get things started, why don't we jump into the leasing topic? And we're going to cover a little bit on what we're seeing in regards to the regulation, some insight in terms of what we think you should think about to prepare and comply with this regulation, and some additional opportunities that we think we can uncover in light of this regulation. So let's talk a little about the regulation. I think most of us are aware of this regulation or starting to hear about it, and this is a regulation that's being worked on by the International Standards Board as well as the Financial Accounting Standards Board, so a joint collaboration that we think will affect most organizations around the world. So let's talk about the current state of leases today. Basically, Most leases, operating leases, are reported off balance sheets and disclosed in the notes of the financial statements. The issue with this is it doesn't really reflect the true financial position of companies today. And what the boards are trying to do is bring better transparency in regards to companies' leases and in the financial statements that they produce as it relates to this. So what the upcoming regulation is requiring most companies to do is capitalize many of their operating leases and report it into the balance sheets. The downstream impact of this is really how you make your decisions on your leases, your assets in general, your processes, and your systems to comply with this regulation. And we're going to talk more about this today. So in light of this regulation, we believe there's also some additional opportunities that this uncovers. And we'd like to look at it as an opportunity to make things better and improve efficiency. So if you imagine having full visibility on your lease assets, you know how much you have, how much you're paying for, when to renew, when to terminate, whether you should buy, when to adjust payments when assets get damaged or destroyed. We think there's a really good opportunity to reduce costs and avoid unneeded penalties. When you think about the long term as well in terms of strategic planning, imagine that you can better understand the assets you have or assets that you need to support your goals. So imagine if you're a transport or cargo company and you expect traffic to grow, then you need to understand how much equipment you have and how much equipment you need to have to support this growth. And this is another interesting opportunity that we can capitalize on in light of this regulation. Another aspect is in terms of the effectiveness and the speed that you can operate at as you manage your leases better. Imagine that you have visibility to your contracts, the terms and conditions, the status of your assets. This helps you make sure that you can operate your business efficiently, effectively. Imagine that your financial people and your operating people are sharing the same information, and the payments associated to leases, the events and the adjustments are handled efficiently through an automated system. This is an interesting opportunity as well. And then finally, having a central place for all your leases in terms of the contracts, in terms of the assets, being able to share this information, be able to track it, and document the changes that you're making into your payments is really critical to complying with this regulation. So when you look at the regulation itself and the need to comply, we really need to look at how we can simplify compliance and help us improve efficiency. So what I think we wanted to talk about now is really how to recognize some of the things that make it difficult for us to get there. So this slide really talks about some of the things that we've seen in talking to many of our customers. So I'll just go through a couple of these challenges that we're facing, that our customers are facing, and hopefully it resonates with the audience as well. When you look at what we're seeing, incompatible decentralized solutions where you're managing your leases through Excel spreadsheets, through file cabinets where your contracts are stored, through legacy systems. It really makes it difficult and time-consuming to maintain and access your lease contracts to make better decisions about key leasing events, renewal versus buy. And in light of regulation, you need to be able to understand your entire lease portfolio to understand the potential impact on your balance sheets. Now let's talk about Excel spreadsheets. I think we're all fairly familiar with the challenges with Excel spreadsheets. And imagine the complexity of managing hundreds of assets where you have multiple lenders and these lease terms are for 10 years, where the payment schedules are long and lengthy and significant in terms of volume. It can get very difficult to maintain this in light of asset events. So when assets get damaged or destroyed, these schedules need to be updated so that you know you're paying for the right amount for your lease portfolio and your lease assets. So this is also critical to make sure you're efficient and also reporting the correct amount on your balance sheets. Let's talk about asset tracking and accounting. What we believe in is really linking up the assets in terms of how it's being used and how it's being operated, the status of those assets, and the accounting. Imagine that you're able to quickly adjust the payment schedules based on those asset events. And this is what we're trying to do as well, to make sure that you're paying the right amount for your assets and linking that up to your accounting system as well as your maintenance system for your assets. We're also seeing some general challenges in terms of managing purchase orders, goods receipts, invoices, journal entries. A lot of it's done manually, communicated via email, and it's really prone to errors, delays, and inconsistencies. So you'll see in the solution that Ilya demonstrates is how we can facilitate that, automate that process, and make sure it's integrated with your ERP system and general ledger. The other challenge finally is really around lease events. When you have a large volume of leases, the payment schedule is evolving based on the asset events. So when assets get damaged or destroyed, as I mentioned, you need to be able to adjust the payments, understand the credits you have, or the additional payments you may have to incur for the lease itself. So these are just some of the main pain points that we've seen our customers are facing, and this is an area where we think we can help. And we'll talk a bit more about that in the next few minutes. Another area to consider is really the threats in terms of compliance, especially around Sarbanes-Oxley as well, SOX 404. So similarly, around the same pain points, some of the threats around compliance is really the potential lack of consistency and documented accounting policies. How much do you depreciate your assets? How do you calculate salvage value? What's your policies around classifying your leases? These need to be clear and make sure that you're able to comply with these regulations. When you look at Excel, we see a lot of customers reporting their quarterly or annual lease commitments. Doing that in Excel can be ineffective and risky, as Excel can change. You lose track of different versions, and it's really not secure in terms of who has access to that information, who can change it. When we talk about asset tracking and accounting, it's really about making sure that you understand the difficulty in what's involved in this process and trying to simplify it. When you want to convert your assets from operating to capital, it's an important aspect to understanding the impact of this regulation. So this is a key area that you also have to consider. As regards to the purchase orders, goods receipts, do you have a good handle in terms of the assets that you ordered, the assets you actually received, that's the goods receipts, and the assets you're actually paying for, making sure they're all reconciled is key to make sure that you have the right amount and the right assets associated to those amounts. And finally, the lease events, you need to be able to document various what we consider exceptions. So when there's an invoice mismatch, when you get a credit for a lender, these events need to be transferred into different groups, from accounting to treasury and even operations, to know that it can be handled effectively. How do you make sure you don't miss renewals or termination dates to make sure that you're handling assets efficiently as well? So in light of those challenges and also the opportunity that we discussed, I'll talk a little bit more about how Nakisa and SAP is working together to help our customers simplify and modernize lease accounting, as well as prepare and comply with this upcoming standard. So first of all, when you look at typical leases from an organization perspective, we know that our goal is really to provide full coverage regardless of your type of lease. So you may be leasing property, you may have equipment or non-property. And also in regards to your principal position, are you a lessor, a lessee, or both? And our goal really is to provide an end-to-end solution to our customers. So when you have property, you have the SAP Lease Management solution. If you're a lessor for equipment, we have the SAP Leasing solution. And when you have equipment in a lessee, we have the SAP Lease Administration by Nakisa. Also, in light of the regulation, box number 5 is a solution that we designed specifically to help customers track and manage all the lease contracts. What the regulation is required to do is collect the right information about those leases, make judgments in terms of what it means from a regulatory perspective as well as an accounting perspective. So our solution is specifically configured to provide that level of guidance in terms of the recommended fields you need to capture, tracking those changes, and be able to share that information. Now, let's move on to the next piece. This is really, and these solutions really sit on top of your ERP system to make sure that it all feeds into your one accounting system, so it facilitates corporate close, entity close, as well as the reporting disclosure at the end of the year. So when we looked at the solution, there's a couple of key capabilities that we really want to focus on to facilitate compliance and to improve efficiencies. One is, as mentioned, is really about collecting the right level of information and centralizing to have full visibility in your lease contracts and understanding the potential impact on your balance sheets. So we designed a solution that can contain all the information that you have and also track all the contracts that you have associated to those leases and associated documentation. Ilya will demonstrate this piece as well. The collaboration is also key because as you collect this information, you'll need different people involved, different partners to help you evaluate the terms and conditions and interpret it based on the regulation as well as your accounting policy. So we've enabled built-in collaboration to allow you to easily share this information and to facilitate approvals of your assessment of your contracts. We've also provided some productivity tools to provide some validation and traceability. So when you start collecting information and understanding who collected that, where it came from in the contract, Ilya will show some features like the tagging feature where you can tag specific areas of the contract that are relevant for review purposes and also relevant for audit purposes, so you can produce reports in terms of where you got this information and how you made these decisions as it relates to your judgments and the regulation. So as we talk about managing the operations of your leases efficiently and accounting for it in order to comply with these regulations, what we try to do is design a really robust process and the tools around that to facilitate the entire life cycle of a lease. So this slide really talks about how you can set up all your lease agreements and the terms and conditions associated to it, linking up the assets associated to it. And then typically you get the equipment, you onboard the equipment. So if you have tens, hundreds of thousands of equipment, whether it's computers, cars, you don't always get these assets at the same time. So as it's delivered, you need to be able to track it so you can execute the right payment amounts for these leases. Operating leases is a critical piece where in a multi-year lease, things happen to your assets, they get lost, they get damaged, they get destroyed. It's important to link the operational side back to the accounting side so you can adjust the payment schedules and pay the right amount for your leases. Also understanding key events in terms of renewal, termination, so that you can make right decisions on your lease agreements and your lease assets. And finally, being able to understand when you need to terminate and renew your leases. So we have a pretty robust process to help you manage this and do it in a timely way. So I'll pass it off to Ilya, who can run through the demonstration of some of the things we covered and how we can help in this area. Ilya?
Thank you, Romeo. So one moment, we'll share the demonstration of the solution. That's great. So as Romeo described, our solution can manage the leasing life cycle from start to end. And what you see right now is the main page of the solution that provides you visibility into the full portfolio of leased assets. I'll just briefly describe the key components of that solution. The main page provides you the list of all the leasing contracts in the table on the left with different important functionalities that we'll overview briefly. On the right, you see the list of important delay notifications and alerts that the user can configure to be properly notified. So, for example, it could be a notification about onboarding of assets due or approvals required or termination. There are examples where customers may be very concerned about missing a termination notice. This is the main purpose of that part. And below, the solution provides you a highly configurable component for bringing up analytics and overall reporting on the portfolio of leases. Now, coming back to the list of leasing contracts, you can see that for each contract, the solution provides you what we call collaboration functionality. So every contract could be shared with different people. And once you have the right people connecting to the contract, and this could be people from different departments, from finance, from accounting, from operations, you can start collaborating with these people. And for example, if the lease contract owner or lease administrator has questions to an accountant about some transactions, these questions could be raised in that solution, and there would be linked to the specific contract. So let's look at the contract. So we will open one example. So what you see on your screen is the view into a single leasing contract. On the left, you have the navigation menu that can actually give you visibility into all steps of leasing process, starting from the first step where you define the master lease agreement, which contains all the terms and conditions with the information related to the relationship with specific lender. And as you move forward to that master agreement, you can start adding individual contracts, or what sometimes are called schedules or riders. And within the contracts, you would define the leasing structure. So it concerns with the number of assets leased, with the value of assets, financing terms. We'll come back to that. As the contract is approved for payment and classified, you move on to the third step, which is onboarding. At this step, the person responsible for receiving the actual assets would be registering them in the solution for later on tracking the status and conditions of every individual asset. And like Romeo mentioned, some typical contract may contain hundreds, even if not thousands of assets. The solution allows you to centralize all that information in one place and share access for this information with different people in the company. The main part of the leasing life cycle is operating the lease, and that includes all the finance transactions that you can see below. It also includes different components related to setting up alerts on the specific contract, or tracking events, or doing reporting. We'll briefly look into that. But let me start with the main first step, where you need to capture all the information from lease contracts, and you obviously start with the master agreement. From that point, you see on the right the data capturing part of the solution, and right away the solution integrates with the ERP system for loading the main master data and the system data. So it tracks the data based on the company code, based on the languages, on currencies. In addition, it allows you to load the actual documents and store them in one single place linked to actual contracts. Once the contract is loaded, you can view it in the solution, and you can actually link the information from the contract to the actual data captured in the solution. What you see on the screen, the rectangular, the green rectangles, they identify the places in the original PDF contract that are captured in the solution. And whenever you click it, it highlights you this data field where that information is captured. So it's a bidirectional link between the data captured and the original information in the legal documents and PDF contract. And you can attach multiple documents to this solution. Every part is linked to different parts. So for example, if the contract represents a total leasing contract with components referring to master agreement and to the specific conditions of this contract, you can see the solution will automatically take you to the right place and will highlight you the components relevant for this part of the contract. So in conclusion of this small part, the solution gives you full access to the contract and shows you for compliance, traceability, and internal controls what information is captured and from where. Now, for every change the person makes in the contract, the solution tracks information in what we call the change log, which is to some extent the representation of the audit trail on the changes if it concerns the finance aspect. That's also a great tool to provide a quick view into who made changes to what. And it's a searchable tool that gives you a quick review on any aspect. Now, if we move forward, you can see different data fields could be tagged, and you can also discuss some of the information within the contract that may not be clear for you if there are other stakeholders participating in the process of leasing. If we move forward to the actual accounting aspect, the solution is fully integrated with the ERP financials. Once the contract is set up and the amortization schedule is approved with all the payments, you would classify the contract, and the solution facilitates the classification process. So it would calculate the implicit interest rate. It would provide the information about the present value of minimum lease payments, which are required for defining whether it's an operating or capital lease. Once the contract is classified, you would proceed to the asset information part, where the assets are actually loaded directly from the ERP asset accounting module. And this part allows you to track every information from the solution. Now, as we move forward, during the operate stage, the solution allows you to do general ledger entries, journal entries directly from the solution. So the invoice and payment page gives you access to the payment component, which allows you to post payments either to Treasury or to accounts payable. Once the payments are posted, you would see the results in the solution as documents posted in ERP, and you can always validate all the previous postings through the change log. Now, if I show all the previous documents posted, you can see the document ID and the date for which the payment was executed. So a few words about how the solution facilitates non-regular events, such as casualty. If you open another contract that has some casualties already reported, what normally would happen, the solution allows you to enter the events directly from the contract management system. In this case, there was a casualty registered, and it would automatically recalculate all the accounting transactions. So, for example, if we look at the amortization schedule here, the casualty date is highlighted, the casualty amount that is indicated, and the payments are properly adjusted based on the type of the payment, arrears or advance. The solution takes care of a lot of manual processing that would usually be required if the leases were managed in Excel. The last quick note is on the configuration of the solution. Oftentimes we have questions, how would you configure the integration with ERP? So the solution has very advanced admin console where we provide all the required tools for setting up the accounts that would be used for making payments. For asset accounting, we're allowed to define depreciation areas, cost centers for allocating costs. And the solution automatically supports what ERP can support. For example, for dual reporting, you would be able to support parallel ledgers if required. All that is available from the admin console for very easy and straightforward configuration. That's a very high-level quick overview. I will pass it now to Pete for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, Ilya. So we want to switch the conversation now to revenue recognition, and we want to go through a little bit of the market drivers, and then we'll talk about how the solution can help customers during the assessment phase of tackling the revenue recognition challenge. So in 2014, or May of 2014, there was a new standard for revenue recognition that was announced. It's called IFRS 15 in Europe. I think it's ASC 606 in the U.S. And basically, the revenue related to contracts with a customer. So if you have any kind of revenue stream that has a contract, it pretty much gets affected. It's also, whether you're public or private, there will pretty much still be an impact. That the public impact is 2018. They're listed here. There was a slight delay announced in July, but now both the U.S. version and the IASB version both have effective dates in 2018, and for private companies it usually lags about a year, so into 2019. But essentially most companies are going to see a big change in the way that their revenue is managed, and that requires quite a bit of planning, and we're starting to see a lot of interest from customers in how to do that planning properly. So first, let's talk a little bit about what the new standard is, and then we can talk about how SAP Lease Administration by Nakisa can help customers in planning for this change. There's a new 5-step process for recognizing revenue. It's listed here. Many of you have probably seen this, but if you haven't, basically you have to identify the contract, that it is a contract that bears revenue with a customer. Then you have to identify the performance obligations, which are essentially what the customer has, or what the customer is expecting. And those could be performance obligations that are listed on an order form, or they could be implied, buried in terms and conditions of the contractor within the set of contracts. And so that makes it a little trickier. Once you've identified those performance obligations, then you can assign them a standalone selling price or a transaction price. There's a way then to allocate those transaction prices across the performance obligations. And the tricky part there is these implied performance obligations. If you have more performance obligations that are on the order form, for instance, line items on the order form, then you have to kind of use a peanut butter spreading approach of taking the standalone selling prices and spread them across all the performance obligations. So once that's done, then you're ready now pretty much to recognize revenue according to the different performance obligations, how they've been allocated to standalone selling price, and how you may recognize revenue over time. For instance, if you had a support obligation, it might be recognizable over a 12-month period. So those are the new 5 steps, and they create some challenges for customers. Certainly, the first challenge gets into visibility, right? Do I have the right visibility into these contracts? What is going to be the new impact under the new standard? and how am I going to collect all this information and make sure that I've got a good handle on it. So certainly those are some of the key pain points, and you'll see some of them are similar to what we talked about with lease accounting contracts, but we have a few differences. But they're similar in many ways. And so what we're asked to do from some Big Four partners, actually now it's, I guess, well over a year ago, is that Sapphire, they, right after the announcement was made for the new standard, they thought that the lease administration tool, the data collection or the lease abstraction parts could be really utilized for the revenue accounting problem. And so we started to look at this. And if you look at the implementation timeline here for the new standard, essentially customers are starting assessment projects now so that they can get ready for the new standards, either implementing in 2016 or 2017 to get ready for the new standard that's effective in 2018. And SAP has two solutions that can help customers get ready for the new standard. Lease Administration by Nakisa is really can help customers with the planning aspect of that. It's really a tool that is designed to capture revenue contract data during the accounting assessment, and that's where the lease administration tool can play. So don't let the name fool you. We'll tell you a little bit about how that happened. It's basically just another template for collecting data using the new 5 steps. The other solution we have to help customers manage the new revenue accounting standard is called SAP Revenue Accounting and Reporting. And this is a solution that really automates and simplifies the revenue accounting process. So this would be, some people call it the engine. So this is really the tool that's going to calculate the standard on an ongoing basis. But before you can install that tool, it turns out that most customers end up looking at their portfolio of contracts and they do a technical accounting assessment. And this is really where the Nakisa product fits in. Most customers take a subset of that revenue portfolio. They might start pulling literally a couple contracts, doing all the assessment work by hand. Some companies that work could take literally 20, 30, 40 hours, the first couple contracts, to do it properly. And along the way, if you had the lease administration tool, you could actually capture that contract data using the 5 steps and have a very good audit trail thereafter for use, not only with the accounting regulators or your auditors, but also to help with the blueprinting. So the next part, or the output of the lease administration content that's been collected for revenue, is really the blueprint that's needed to implement SAP Revenue Accounting Reporting. You will then have a very logical representation of those accounting contracts for revenue, and that's fed in manually to the blueprinting process that SAP does when we set up any of our systems. And that blueprinting process then is very easy for a consultant to take and can convert into BR Plus rules. And really, our SAP Revenue Accounting Reporting solution is a rules-based system. The idea is that for every accounting contract type that you have for revenue, you would have a set of rules that then helps automate it. Because the long-term goal here is that when you actually have the system fully operational, all of your revenue contracts, bills, invoices, orders are going to be automatically integrated into SAP Revenue Accounting Reporting. The rules will apply and create literally the 5 steps, the performance obligations, the standalone selling prices will be allocated. I mean, all of that work will be automated, and it will output journal entries for revenue recognition into your ERP financial system. So that's kind of how the two systems or solutions fit together. They're complementary. Lease Administration by Nakisa is not a replacement for revenue accounting reporting. I hear this question a lot. It's very complementary. Literally, it's used for the preparation phase and for the setup phase and for really input into the blueprinting, which can help speed up the rules generation. We also have some customers that are looking and will use Lease Administration by Nakisa for a very good audit trail of why they made certain decisions about the 5 steps and adopting the 5 steps. So that's what we want to focus on here today. And Nakisa actually did this themselves. They actually went through and they applied lease administration by Nakisa. Their finance team, run by Brad Wolf, actually went through and they kind of did a t-shirt sizing for the accounting assessment. They already went through kind of initial assessment. They knew what kind of contract types they had. They then went into the lease administration tool for the template that has the revenue contract information and the 5 steps. And they went through and captured 37 contracts, and they were able, over a very short period of time, be able to assess then what their contracts will look like under the new standard. And they actually did that in a very short timeline. And if you look at this timeline, you can see that this was about a 90-hour project over the course of a month. And so basically, literally in about the space of a month, they went from 0 to I can now understand what the impact is of the certain contracts we have. And we'll cover that here in one more slide. We just want to make sure in terms of doing the assessment kickoff and the internal use case, they did a collaborative effort. So it was finance and product management, IT, legal, and sales. They basically had a very good team effort here. They make sure they would get in all the right information from the different resources that could have an impact on the revenue accounting process. One other aspect we want to highlight is actually the workflow and collaboration capabilities within the tool. So as they went through it, Carmen was actually collecting a lot of the data, then going back and forth with Imran, who has actually consulted on the product as well, but is also part of the accounting team, and making sure that they were capturing the data in the right way, and there could be some approvals needed, and eventually then Brad, head of finance, would do the final approval and acceptance of the interpretation of the 5 steps, and then literally that would lead to the output, which tells you exactly how the current contract accounting would compare to the new contract accounting. So literally, you can see how the revenue would change, not only the timing of the revenue, but potentially the overall revenue in some cases. So I think that was a very good internal project that Nakisa did. And you look at the benefits, certainly I think, in the course of a month, about 90 hours of effort, you go from not knowing what the new standard will be in terms of impacting your business to understanding that for a good set or a certain subset of your contracts. I think that is a great benefit. There's also the other benefits of knowing that you're able to capture all of the data related to the 5 steps and the decisions made, and using collaboration and workflow to get those decisions more quickly and more productively. We are hearing from our ramp-up customers that for SAP Revenue Accounting Reporting, when they implement, the challenge they have is it takes a long time to collect that data, not because of typing or entering the data, but of getting the organization to approve how they're actually going to interpret and implement the 5 steps. So that's where all the time is being spent in the workflow and in the collaboration. So with that, I want to turn it over to Ilya so we can do a quick demo just so you can see how the solution can capture data related to revenue contracts.
Thank you, Pete. So let me share again the presentation with the demonstration of this solution. Okay, so it's coming up. Now you should see the new look of the solution configured for assessing the impact of the new revenue recognition standard. What you see here is the list of different contracts entered into the solution, and as we mentioned several times earlier, it's highly configurable for capturing or abstracting information from different types of contracts. Therefore, you can see in the list of contracts for leasing and for the sales contracts, so marked as other. The solution allows to have the same functionality in terms of data capturing, in terms of tracking changes, collaborating with different people, and defining the procedures and guidelines from accounting perspective to basically transition to the new revenue accounting standard from data abstraction perspective. So let me open one example of the sales contract that combines several software licenses and the implementation services. And the question is how to capture and what information to capture to properly define performance obligations in these type of contracts and how the process, the 5-step process of revenue recognition would look like. What you see in the solution for these types of contracts is the 5-step process. That's the navigation menu on the top. It takes you from the first general step through all the 5 steps and brings you to the summary page that we'll see shortly. At the bottom, you see the data fields, and once again, these are some of the out-of-the-box data fields that we can capture, but the solution allows to add more and configure the data part to actually feed the contract templates that you use. And also, in addition to the data capture, the solution allows to upload and store within the contract all relevant documents with the same tagging and connecting data to the contract functionality. Now, to be more specific on the revenue recognition process, if we go back for a moment to I'm getting a comment that the demo may not be shown, so just to reconfirm for a second.
So I can see it. Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's just to make sure. We want to double check if yes, so it works. Okay, so let me continue. As you can see on the top, we start with the general step, and as we move forward, solution actually takes you through all the questions and steps required to properly identify and recognize performance obligations. The solution not only helps you to go through that, but it also guides you in cases where you may not be sure or may answer questions that in theory should not permit you to move forward. So in this case, if we select that parties have not yet approved the contract, the solution shows you an excerpt from the standards that explains why you cannot move forward, that you have to satisfy the different criteria here. And normally during the process, you would be capturing information that would become the guidelines for revenue recognition moving forward. These guidelines could be placed for internal accounting policy in different sections of the solution. As you can see on the right, every section permits you to capture the regulation paragraphs that are relevant and could help in performing this step. It can capture the technical line, and within each contract, you can record comments, clarifications, and assumptions for the solution. So these are components that are available. Once you complete one step, you would move forward to the next and to the next. So let's look briefly at how the performance obligations would be identified. At the step number 2, you can see there is a summary table that allows you to define performance obligation, and it can add multiple performance obligations. If you are not certain, you can either pick from an existing list that would be accumulated or built up as you evaluate different types of contracts, or you can add new ones. In this specific contract, we have 2 performance obligations. The first one is for software licenses that actually combines all different licenses together, and the second one is the maintenance for the software, which is a separate performance obligation. And you can see as you choose the performance obligation at the bottom, you actually define different information related to performance obligations and to, for example, services captured in this one. Now, as you keep moving through the steps, the solution guides you through what information for each performance obligation you need to capture. For example, if I select software licenses performance obligation, I see I need to enter a base transaction price. I can capture the discounts, different types of discounts. I can define the variable considerations that might be relevant to this. And at every step, I can record assumptions and decisions made. Once we completed this process, the solution allows you to generate a white paper that actually summarizes all comments, decisions, and guidelines captured throughout this process, which later on greatly facilitates the processing of the standard contracts or preparing the business rules framework for processing performance obligations automatically in revenue accounting and reporting tool by SAP. At the last step, we have the summary of the, in this case, 2 performance obligations captured in the contract with the high-level information about every relevant attribute of each performance obligation. So just to give you a quick idea, software licenses would be fulfilled at a point in time. The transaction price is shown here, and standalone selling price is shown in the table 2. The maintenance services would be delivered over time, and you can see the allocation of transaction price and standalone selling price. All that gives you very quick and powerful visibility into the new revenue recognition process according to the new standard. So with that, I'll pass it back to Romeo.
Thank you. Yeah. So we'll wrap things up with some takeaways, and we can handle some questions. I know there's some questions on the chat message, and we'll read those out and answer as many as we can. So hopefully everyone enjoyed the session today and learned something new. Just some key takeaways. Really, it's about being prepared and uncovering opportunities to reduce effort, costs in regards to these regulations. The revenue accounting standard is here, effective 2018. Lease accounting standard is expected in 2015. It's important that you understand the impact potentially on your organization in terms of the processes, in terms of the financial position. And as Pete and Ilya also highlighted, doing assessment is a good way to understand the potential impact and the things you can do to plan and execute in terms of being ready for this regulation. We also feel there's some opportunities that can be discovered, so it's not just about complying with these regulations, but opportunity to improve things, reduce costs, and improve efficiencies. So if you look at your lease portfolio, for example, you might be able to cover evergreen leases where you can reduce those complexities and payments. You might be able to reduce the effort while at the same time complying with this regulation. And finally, Nakisa and SAP, we're working together to make sure we have these solutions, and these solutions are available for our customers. You can deploy them on-premise or on the cloud or hybrid, so it's really about giving you some choices in terms of what makes sense for you. Pete, is there anything you'd like to add on top of this before we go into questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're hearing from customers, and I've been on the road quite a bit lately, is that they need to start preparing, and certainly the lease administration solution can help you get ready for either standard by allowing you to start assessing those lease or revenue contracts. So I think it is definitely good for customers to take a look at that today. I know leases are a little bit further away, but definitely some customers have literally hundreds of thousands of leases that they may have to capture. On the revenue contract side, that standard is more pressing, and you may not have as many contracts to assess, but still that work is coming up very quickly. So use the tool to get ready, and definitely if you're not going through those accounting assessments, you should be, because literally on the revenue side, we just literally have, for most customers, a little over 2 years to go before the standard is effective.
Thanks, Pete. And as I mentioned, our goal here with the solutions is really help customers in this area. The solution, as I mentioned, can be deployed in the cloud. That includes even HANA Cloud Platform. And what we try to do is design these solutions to leverage what you already have. So if you have SAP ERP, that's perfect. If you're moving to S/4HANA or Simple Finance, that's okay as well. So whether you're using the latest technologies from SAP like HANA Cloud Platform, that's fully supported. So we'll close things up with some questions. We have some questions on the line, and we'll go through it. We have about 1 minute to answer a few. So one question was, do we need SAP CRM for this solution? That's a good question. The answer is no. Really the core requirement is SAP ERP Financials if you want the accounting integration. The contract piece can run standalone if you just want to be able to centralize all your leases. So that's a standalone solution that can run independent of the environment, and that allows you to do the assessment both for revenue recognition and leasing. So we received another question here. I'm just going to read it out here. The question is, we may book payments to vendor based on payment schedule, but to deduct VAT, we need to have VAT invoice on a monthly payment operating lease. Can you please tell us how to reconcile the payments with the supplier lessor invoice? Do you want to take that one?
Thank you, Romeo. Yes, it's a very good question. I didn't have a chance to show, but the solution allows to load the invoices from accounts payable. So if the invoices are posted to accounts payable module of ERP, you can bring them up and reconcile on the payments and invoices page in the solution.
Thank you. One more question before we go, and here's our contact information as well on the slides. So for those that we didn't address today, feel free to reach out to us, or as well if you have more information, we're happy to talk to you. We also have an upcoming event for those folks that are interested in Newtown Square, Philadelphia, October 13th, 14th. We'll be there in person. We'd love to meet you and speak to you about these topics. We're also interested in spending time learning about your situation. So the question, too, was really about whether this presentation is available. So the session is recorded. Slides can be made available as well for downloads. And if anything, feel free to reach out to either Pete or myself, Romeo, and we'll be happy to provide that to you as well. We're just about out of time. I just want to thank our audience for taking the time to listen to us. We appreciate the time. Thank you also to my co-presenters, Pete and Ilya. Great job, guys, and thanks for participating. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.